Tucker Carlson dropped a second episode of his new Twitter show, this despite facing legal threats from Fox News over claims that the former host violated his contract by launching his new show. In the second episode, he gave a monologue about social taboos and how things are defined in the United States. Here's some of that.
American society isn't overtly religious, but it's governed by taboos, and it always has been. What's interesting is how fast our taboos are changing. This is not happening organically. What we're allowed to dislike is being dictated to us from above, sometimes by force. Until fairly recently, for example, it was taboo in this country to attack people on the basis of their race. That was the main lesson of the Second World War, we were told, again and again. The one thing we learned from the Nazis is that it's dangerous to reduce human beings to their genetic code. There is no master race. That made sense, but apparently we no longer believe it. Punishing people based on their skin color is not only permitted in modern America, it is mandatory throughout business and government and higher education, as long as the victims are white.
He also weighed in on white supremacy. Let's watch.
White supremacy is the most dangerous threat to the American homeland. Joe Biden just told us that. It's more dangerous than the threat of nuclear war with Russia. It's more dangerous than the threat of the Mexican drug cartels, who've already killed hundreds of thousands of Americans and are now in control of swaths of our southwestern states. White supremacy is that bad, Joe Biden says. In fact, it's worse. But what is it? That's the question. Can anyone in authority actually define white supremacy? What is it? Is white supremacy liking white people too much? If so, that's going to put those of us with white children in a pretty tough spot.
White supremacy is an easy thing for me to define. It's the belief that if you are of the white race, if your racial identity is white, it's the belief that you are better than people of other racial identities. That's a pretty easy one.
Yeah, and he goes on to say that in the monologue. He says he's basically making the distinction between what government officials are defining as white supremacy versus what it actually is, which is a collection of people who believe the white race is superior and are trying to basically turn the United States into a white ethno-state. And his point in this monologue is to say that people who are being accused of white supremacy now are people who hold different political beliefs than the establishment, and they're trying to criminalize people for having those beliefs by labeling them under this blanket term that is supposed to mean something entirely different. And the idea that white supremacy, as we define it, is the greatest threat to our nation, I think is ridiculous. I mean, how many real white supremacists who want a white ethno-state are there really in the United States? Like 7?
Right. I think the real threat to our country, or the biggest threat rather, is corporate power and the elites. But that's just me being a raging populist, you know? I do there's a few things from Tucker Carlson's communication style that I think are dangerous because he uses them to make points that I think
that you disagree with
are not true, right? To have an argument where it's many sound and true premises and then a conclusion that might lead people astray from what is reality, I think is what makes Tucker Carlson dangerous. But taboos being enforced by law and then saying that's actually kind of a good thing, but also saying taboos, it was taboo to be non-white. It was taboo for people to, be of a different race, and therefore people were violent towards them. That is a reality. Also, for him to say, we made it taboo to be racist, and now that's what is governing our society. He's talking about social norms and using the word taboo to communicate this better. I think that's useful. It was also for a while taboo to be gay. They're trying to bring that back. I think he makes some substantive points here, but I'm not sure if saying being governed by taboos is a good thing and saying, well, they're trying to tell you what to like and dislike. But also, shouldn't it be taboo to be racist? Shouldn't it be taboo to be the type of person that imposes their beliefs on others? There's always going to be social norms in a society. There's always going to be a set of rules that we abide by as we relate to one another, because we're not individuals that never talk to another human being. There's going to be social norms. We're social beings. And so, yeah, he's framing social norms as taboos in a way that I don't think is helpful.
Well, the full discussion that he was having about the taboos, he said in the clip that we watched that it used to be taboo to be racist, which is a good thing. That's a taboo that should exist. But he was talking about that in the larger framework of taboos about child pedophilia and child pornography and sexual abuse. And he was discussing the Instagram case, wherein Instagram was found to have been using their algorithms to give people content in which they could access child sex abuse material. So his point was that why is our society basically not as angry about stories like this as they used to be? Why are we not demanding further investigation of the Epstein Black Book, for example? Why are we not demanding further investigation of sex abuse in public schools, which is double the rate of what happens in Catholic churches? And he's wondering, when did that taboo change and why?
Yeah, Tucker also said in this, he wants people to cling to their taboos. Let's watch some of that from this clip we have where he's just emphasizing that importance.
When a crime has no definition, anyone can be guilty of it. It's hard to relax in a country like that. The old system was better. Government operated on the basis of laws, not amorphous moral terror. Politicians couldn't accuse you of something they couldn't define. The legal code was straightforward. Child molestation was a crime. Having unfashionable opinions was not. Outside of the public sphere, the population mostly governed itself, as it does in every society, and used taboos to do it. You knew what was allowed and what wasn't because the rules didn't change very often. The taboos were organic. They derived from collective experience and instinct, the two most reliable guides to life. They evolved for a reason. They still do. Our job at this point is to protect them.
Yeah. What I make of this is it seems like he's discouraging people from participating in the process of deciding what is just, right? Law and justice, not the same thing. That's basically what he's saying here. We have some understanding of what is right and what is wrong as a society. I don't know if I would call that what is a fashionable belief. I think people have a moral code that might not always be represented by laws that we have. The crisis here, I would say, is that those ideas and beliefs that people have are not being effectively represented in government, either because they've been gerrymandered and their opinion is diluted, so they have representatives that don't actually represent the opinions of the majority of the people in the country. We have so many polls that show that common sense gun reform is popular among the majority of people. So many people believe that we should protect the right to abortion by law. That's a majority opinion in the United States, whether we agree with these things or not. Shouldn't a democracy represent people's majority opinion? And so to discourage this kind of dialogue and to say, well, we can't have a bunch of social justice warriors, you're basically telling the public, we used to leave it to these elites, essentially, a small group of people to make laws for the rest of us. People having beliefs about what should be a norm in our society and those not being represented in government, I think is a crisis of government, not a crisis of the people in our society behaving in a way where they're imposing their beliefs on others and saying what should be fashionable. Those ideas should be represented in government. There should be laws made about them protecting people one way or another. And so that's really what I make of this speech from Tucker.
I actually thought he was saying the opposite. I thought he was saying that when you have a moral code and you believe something so strongly because it's true, then you shouldn't allow the elites or the mainstream media or certain forces in society to sway your opinion based on what's fashionable at the time or based on some amorphous idea of progress. So it's more about people adhering to their internal moral compass outside of this external pressure that might exist, whether through legal channels like this fight to criminalize white supremacy when they label people who are not even white as white supremacists, or when the FBI releases a memo saying that people who attend traditional Latin Mass are more likely to be domestic extremists or white supremacists. He's saying that in spite of all of that pressure, you should cling to what you believe.
I think that's a fair assessment. I think we're going to have to leave it there. I don't know if that's what I take away from this, because I could see it going the other way where it's like Tucker Carlson saying, well, you guys, we believe this thing. Maybe we should use the law to enforce some traditional Christian values if you believe in it so much, right? There are a lot of laws being passed that could be dangerous to people who are members of the LGBTQ plus community, like we saw in Florida, right? The teaching of just different kinds of family structures in schools. I think that's fine. Like, if you say there are many different ways to be, of course, cling to what you want as an individual, raise your family however you want to raise them. But to say we shouldn't teach people about the other ways of life, that's where I think I don't agree with Tucker Carlson and a lot of the conservative agenda right now.
Well, as you said, we have to leave it there, but we'll be back with more Rising after this.